Kia ora, everyone. It's Nathan Rose here in beautiful Auckland, New Zealand. I am joined today with the legendary Damien Bird in Scotland. Demo is an absolute legend in the Power Platform community, former MVP, currently works at Microsoft, has an epic YouTube channel. You absolutely should check it out. Demo, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Hi there, Nathan. Cheers. Thanks for the intro. I was just hearing about your summer and laughing at the fact that 14 degrees to you is cold because in Scotland right now, yeah, we're in a
Yeah,
sorry, I said summer, isn't it? Or winter, I mean, yeah.
yeah, it's wintertime. Yeah.
Our summer is 14 degrees if we're lucky. Although we had a cracking weekend just now, so the weather has
Yeah.
been very good to us this weekend, but not so great a summer. But
Yeah,
yeah, I love my Power Platform, definitely. And very
yeah,
interested to see what you've put together today.
yeah, absolutely. So I think it was last year, you shared an epic demo on something that comes up every project ever is calculating working days between two dates. It comes up pretty much all the time. And you showed off a couple of ways to do it in Power Apps and in Power Automate. Yes, if you want to just run us through that real quick, just briefly, what you came up with.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, I love challenges, and that particular example was a challenge. So I started off by doing it in Power Automate using my favorite action, a select. So just creating an array of dates. And then with that array of dates, I was able to exclude holidays. And I was using an external data source, in this case, a SharePoint list. But of course, it
Yeah,
could be anything. It could be Dataverse, etc. And then excluding those days and able to then count the number of working days. But whilst doing so, I realized that there are actually some similarities in Power Apps in terms of some of the expressions. And I think from memory, I used a for all, maybe a sequence or something along those lines
yeah,
to
yeah,
create an equivalent table in Power Apps using Power FX. So my video went on to demonstrate how to do it in Power Apps as well.
yeah.
And yeah, it's been a popular video. It's good. It's
It's
I
epic
think
video.
well,
Yeah,
these are the things that interest you, spur on new ideas.
yeah.
And I understand it's spurred on an idea for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So a few months ago, you and I were chatting about some things that maybe we could combine Power Automate and low code plugins, and you threw down the challenge to take a look at calculating working days in low code plugins. And it took me a while, man. It took me a good couple of months of bashing away at it, but I am really excited to take you through the first iteration of working days between two dates in low code plugin. Let me go ahead and share my screen and I'll take you through what I've come up with. All right,
I
cool.
can,
I assume that's
cool.
coming through okay.
Yeah, I can see that. Perfect.
Cool. Okay, so we're in the Dataverse Accelerator app, and this is an instant low code plugin. Now, the cool thing about instant low code plugins is that they're not actually plugins. You're actually creating a custom API behind the scenes, which means that we can call them across the Power Platform, anywhere from Power Apps to Power Automate to Copilot Studio. And so what I've done is I've got a bunch of input parameters. So I'm going to take in a year and a country and a start and end date, and then it's going to do its thing here, and it's going to give me some working days. Let me explain what's going on because there's quite a bit of stuff here. So let's talk about what's going on. So the way I get to this number of working days is I start with my beginning and end date. And what I need to do is I need to dynamically build out a table between those dates. And so I'm using, like you, for all in sequence and a date diff. And I'll just show you, I'm just going to flick over to the Power Platform CLI, the PowerFX CLI, to show you what's actually going on in that part of the expression. So here in VS Code, this is a modified version of that expression where I'm basically creating a table of dates between a start and end date. So I've taken today and then 10 days from now, and I've created a table here of dates. And so that's the first thing that's going on in the plugin. The next thing that I need to do is I need to work out in this array of dates that I have, how many of these are non-weekend dates, because We don't work Saturdays and Sundays. At least we're not supposed to. So there's a really cool function in PowerFX called weekday. And if you don't change any of the default settings, it assumes that 1 is Sunday and 7 is Saturday. So what I do is I go through this array of dates with this weekday function and say, get rid of all the Saturdays and the Sundays. And so that's just come back here to VS Code. And that's what's going here. I'm basically saying count anything that's not a Saturday or Sunday. So that gives me my number of non-weekend days between the start and end dates.
And so in this command line interface, does it actually show you the output at all? So when you're testing these,
yeah, right here.
So you've got your 8, yeah. But when you created, for instance, your table in the first one, that's
here. I'll show you this in action. So I've got my. So let's just copy paste this. So this is going to get me an array of dates. So this right here, So just do that.
See how it plays out.
Hit return, and so it's given me.
So that is your table of data. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then the same thing for the number of non-weekend days. Let's copy paste this in. And it gives us 8 non-weekend days. Yeah, so that's nice one. Okay.
Yeah, so the PowerFX CLI basically works the exact same way as low-code plugins. So anything you can do in the CLI, you can do in low-code plugins, and vice versa.
And so that saves you sort of testing it in the Canvas app, doesn't it? It's
it makes life so much easier.
I've never properly used it, but I might have to go and give it a go now.
Oh, mate, it will change your life. Yeah. So once we've got our array of dates and our number of non-weekend days between it, now we need to figure out, are there any public holidays in there? And you use SharePoint, and I've gone a slightly different route. There's a very cool API in the Power Platform called Get Public Holidays, and you can use this to search. I think it's called Worldwide Bank Holidays, and you can search public holidays for any country around the world. And now the CLI doesn't support connectors, so let me pop over to my Canvas app here, and I'll just show you what's coming back from this API. So you can see here I've chosen 2024 in New Zealand, and it's given me a list of the public holidays in New Zealand. So, and as you showed me, we highlight this. This is everything that's coming back from that API. So it's quite a bit of data. I've just simply taken the date for the public holiday, and the next thing I'm going to do, come back here to the Dataverse Accelerator. Once I've got this list of public holidays, is I basically say, is there a public holiday in this range of dates? So this array of dates between the start and end dates. And then we finish up by simply taking the number of non-weekend days between our start and end dates and subtracting the number of public holidays we found from it. And so that's how the plugin works. So let's test it out, see it in action. Now there is a very cool new test canvas here in the Dataverse Accelerator app that just got released in the last few weeks. And so we can choose our low-code plugin from the list here. Calculating working days comes up on the top, which is great. So let's choose 2024, and let's choose Great Britain. And let's get the number of public holidays between today, which is the 29th of the 7th, and let's say the 29th of August.
And so these are like input parameters to the plugin, is that?
Exactly. Yep. So so it's just taking strings. And we'll click send. And it's computed that there's 22 working days between now and the end of August in Great Britain.
That's certainly a repeatable, a repeatable solution, that one, versus probably a number of actions I had to have in my Power Automate. Wow.
Yeah, you can see we've got a couple more in New Zealand. Unfortunately, we don't have any public holidays for a while, so we used all ours up over Christmas and New Year's. So bit more work for us to do during winter here in the southern hemisphere. But yeah, that's basically how the plugin works. But what's really cool is we can now call this across the Power Platform. So we built some core business logic, and now we can deploy it whether we're working in Power Apps, Power Automate, or even Copilot Studio, although there's some caveats to that. So let's come back to Power Apps, and we'll come here to this the screen where I'm calling the plugin. And so to call it in Power Apps, we just add the environment table from Dataverse, and this lets us work with our low-code plugins as well as any pro-code plugins that you've got in your environment. So let's go ahead and play the app. And I've picked the month of December because I'm starting to think summer and Christmas time. So let's run this for Great Britain in the month of December. And it says that you've got 20 working days in Great Britain in the month of December. Does that sound about right?
Could be, yeah. I've got some holidays, so I'm definitely going to be taking a couple of extra days off.
Same. Yeah, let's try it for New Zealand. Now, since we've got one less, even though on the books we've actually got the same public holidays as you, Christmas Day and Boxing Day, we'll come back here real quick. I'll show you what's going on. So in this API, in New Zealand, we've got something called regional holidays, and I think in Britain you've got them as well. So you see here we've got anniversary days in Auckland and Wellington and Nelson. And so if you reside there, that's the public holiday you get. The rest of the country doesn't. And if we come down here to December, we see that there's a public holiday in early December. Actually, there's two. And so what I've done is my assumption has been if a public holiday comes back from this API, we're just going to assume that it's a public holiday. But if we were doing this in production, we would probably need to go with more with the approach that you took, where we have a list in SharePoint or a table in Dataverse, where we need to validate the person making the request, where they're located, and is there a regional holiday. So there's a bit more complexity that I've not built into the plugin, as I just wanted to show it working across the Power Platform. But
I think it demonstrates the flexibility you've got there,
yeah.
and the fact that you can delegate that role to HR, and they can manage the holidays, and then bring it into the low-code plugin.
Yeah, exactly. And so we can use this in Power Automate as well. So we'll come over here to Power Automate, and I've got a simple flow here that's just going to call this low-code plugin using our friendly Unbound action, because again, it's a custom API, which means it's an unbound action. And so we can go ahead and just call this in Power Automate. So we've got logic that's now extensible across the Power Platform again. So if we run and test this, and again, and we'll keep it consistent with our dates in between the end of July and the end of August. And we can see that our flows run, and we got the same number that we got in Power Apps and in the test canvas. So that's calling it in Power Automate.
I mean, it's pretty impressive, because if you think about it, there's so many people calling out for Power FX. I think a lot of people don't realize that Power Automate has its own language, the logic app functions or expressions. And so to be able to suddenly bring Power FX into Power Automate, albeit I suppose it's still not GA, is it? You were telling me early, but but the fact that you can build something custom, it's very much like a custom connector in some ways. You can build something that's custom to your requirements using Power FX in Power Automate, which is quite exciting. Lots of ideas buzzing about in my head.
So the last thing I'll show you, let me just hide this Teams bar, is Copilot Studio. Now, this is where the caveat comes in, because in Copilot Studio, we can add these things called actions, and this allows us to interact with Unbound Actions in Dataverse. So this is still a preview feature. Now, the issue I've got is this plugin requires 4 input parameters. And when I add it in, I'm getting errors in Copilot Studio. So I'm getting an error about overlapping property paths. Now, I've gone into the the YAML, and I've tried to hack stuff around and whatnot, and generally made things worse. But for the time being, as near as I can tell, you're going to get an error whenever you try to calculate working days. So if we just go here and say calculate working days, when it goes to call this action, it's going to throw an error because of these input parameters. Yeah, so it's not even connecting to it at the moment. However, if our low-code plugin doesn't have input parameters, so I've got a simple one here that gets a Ron Swanson quote from an API, because why wouldn't you want a Ron Swanson quote? You see, we've got no input parameters and no errors. And so if we say, get me a Ron Swanson quote, take a second to the run.
I'm going to have to frantically Google, Bing, who Ron Swanson is.
Oh, mate. A character from a show called Parks and Recreation. Absolutely hysterical.
I recognize the face now. I've Googled. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were able to get a Ron Swanson quote through the plugin. So Copilot Studio will support calling low-code plugins that don't have input parameters, but it doesn't support them when you do have input parameters at the moment. So my guess is that's something that'll get ironed out as they work through preview and get towards GA for some of these features. So
did the input parameters show for the first action, for the first connector?
They don't. So I just simply get this error.
Oh,
yeah.
So they're hidden. Okay, and that's where it falls over.
Yeah. So
I totally agree, isn't it? It's preview, so
yeah. I mean, we know what we're signing up for, and yeah, when you go to add these in, it won't ask you to add the input parameters, but you'll get this failure. And a few months ago when I tried this, when you come down here to add, it's not showing at the moment, but there's usually an option to add, oh, here it comes, add your additional inputs. And not able to scroll down. But there's a button that's just below the fold here that I can't seem to scroll to. If it's these, there we go. That.
Zoom out on the browser.
Yeah, there we go. So there's a button here to add, and so we can see the input from our plugin, so they're there. And when you add it in, you won't see anything happen in the browser. But if you add them in and save, they will be there. But yeah, we're getting errors at the moment. So I think there's just something under the
work in progress. But it demonstrates the potential, and the potential is pretty huge. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ability to, again, write it once and reuse it across the Power Platform is just absolutely epic. So yeah, so that's my take on your brilliant idea to calculate working days between two dates using low-code plugins. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a good example for sure. So, like, if I was to summarize what you've demonstrated, then you've gone into this new feature for low-code plugins, and you've used PowerFX to build a custom plugin that will accept 4 inputs, and off the back of that run some PowerFX and calculate the number of working days between those periods, taking into account public or local holidays based on that API, albeit we could switch out with an external data source. And by building that plugin, you can then use it in Power Apps, in Power Automate, or hopefully in the future it's coming in Copilot Studio. A totally repeatable solution across the Power Platform. I love it. I think it's really impressive. And I need to go and find out more about low-code plugins.
Oh, mate, you got to get hands-on with these. They will change your life. Yeah. Cool. Oh, Damo, thanks so much for your time, mate. I guess we'll leave it there. But yeah, thanks so much for taking the time. And yeah, hope to see what you come up with next. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll have to get thinking.
yep.
Cheers, Nathan.
So have a good one.
Cheers.
Bye.